Okay, I think we can do two because I got one here that I actually planned on watching a while ago, and I kept ending up not watching it. So I so chat, we're gonna have one kind of interesting one. We're gonna kind of keep on a bit of a Hollywood theme here, at least partially, and then we're gonna end on a good one.
Ember and chat, I just wanted to say, and I know that I sound like a broken record, but Ember is the greatest streamer on Twitch. And this community is the greatest one ever.
Thank you, GBP. Thank you. No, no Diddy news. No, 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 no. No new stuff. So chat, we're gonna take a look at why the Hannibal TV show was canceled. So how many did any of you guys ever see the Hannibal TV show that came out what, mid 2010s, I think? It was basically sort of a prequel to it was sort of a prequel to Headhunter all the way up through Red Dragon. Yeah, it was a prequel to like Headhunter / Red Dragon all the way up through Red Dragon, and it delved more into the relationship between Hannibal and Will Graham. And I thought it was quite good. Yeah, the ending of it, which I think I talked about in this video, may talk about it. Like it had what I think this had like 3 seasons. So, you know, it had a 3-season run, so I wouldn't call it canceled so fast. 3 seasons is still decent. And but yeah, it basically it explored the relationship between Hannibal and Will Graham, because you only catch like a glimpse of that in Headhunter / you only catch a glimpse of that in Red Dragon. And so this, yes, Hannibal Lecter, GVP, that is who we are talking about. So this basically explored that much more, and also explored Will Graham, or Manhunter. I kept saying Headhunter, didn't I? Yes, I meant Manhunter. Although Manhunter is not quite right. Like, well, I guess it probably was, and William Pearson was great in Manhunter. Yeah, own it. Adaptation is kind of sort of right. Like Manhunter stayed pretty close. They were, you know, in Red Dragon, of course, they had Anthony Hopkins because he'd established himself as being Hannibal Lecter by that point. So, Red Dragon kind of Hollywoodized the story more so than Manhunter did. So, but this explores the time before then. So you get to see more of Will Graham and how Will Graham operated as an agent. And you get to see Hannibal and how Hannibal operated as a serial killer. So I thought it was a really pretty good movie. Mads Mikkelsen was fucking fantastic as Hannibal Lecter. I really liked him as Hannibal Lecter. And I forget who the actor was that played Will Graham. I forget his name, but I thought he also did quite a good job. So it's going to say, you know, we're going to go into why was it canceled, but I'm also curious where the decision making was for the final season, because the final season of Hannibal, actually the final 2 seasons kind of went off the fucking rails. So let's see if it explains what happened.
Why was Hannibal cancelled so early? I find it bizarre for a show praised and loved by everyone to be ended just after 3 seasons. But there are a few key factors that have led to this decision. So these are the 4 main reasons.
No, Ping, no. You are thinking of the original Manhunter, which starred William Peterson, who is in CSI. The TV show is a completely different actor. Yeah, you're thinking of the original Manhunter, as with William Peterson as Will Graham, and he plays Gil Grissom in CSI. Not the same here. Completely different actor.
Is why Hannibal got cancelled. Starting with the first and most important reason, which is the ratings. You have to understand that the people behind broadcasting networks don't care if a show is a complete mess or masterpiece. They only care if people are watching it in real time, playing ads, and earning money in the process. But Hannibal wasn't that kind of show. It started with about 2.5 million viewers, which wasn't bad. But by season 3, it had less than 1.5 million viewers. They didn't care that Hannibal had a really passionate fan base or that it was actually thriving internationally. The numbers weren't enough to make them happy. And in the world of broadcast television, if you're not drawing those massive numbers, then you're considered disposable. Streaming platform.
And by the way, this had a big cast too, because not only did it have Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal, hang on. It had Lawrence Fishburne as what was the character's name? Jack Crawford. Yeah. So like you had Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal. You had fucking Lawrence Fishburne as Jack Crawford, who had he was one of the top billed individuals. And again, for the life of me, I cannot remember who the actor was that played Will Graham, but Will Graham did a great job. Well, odds notching that could be doubt. Like it had a respectable view count at for the first season, but then you saw the second season start to fall off because the second season started going kind of off the rails. The first season, while it did have some psychological trippiness, I'll call it that, psychological trippiness, it was still a pretty grounded series, despite the psychology and like the hallucinogenic kind of visuals. The story itself was still fairly grounded. Season 2 and season 3 kind of started going off the rails into more of an adventure kind of situation. And I think that's when people started to lose people. Oh, and I forgot, they also had Gillian Anderson was also a significant role in this movie. Yeah, Gillian Anderson was actually quite prominent in it. So like they had a big name cast, and they all did a wonderful job.
Those massive numbers, then you're considered disposable. Streaming platforms may care more about other things now, but back then, you had to play by the rules. And Hannibal wasn't just a show you could throw on in the background while eating your dinner. It was a show that required attention and an actual investment from the audience. The second reason is that the show was too graphic for NBC's delicate standards. NBC is the network that had the rights for the Hannibal series. But do you know what they usually produce? Safe content digestible by everyone. And that's exactly what Hannibal wasn't. This show is filled with violent scenes that contain torture and murder. Picture this. 1 minute you're hearing dumb jokes from a random show made for kids, and the next you're staring at a gruesome murder scene. The network obviously didn't like that, and after a while they wouldn't allow it anymore. They envisioned themselves as family-friendly, and I guess it must have been too much for them. Had Hannibal been on...
Oh, yeah. Wow, yeah. There were some very gruesome crime scenes in this show. That was the whole concept, is like it was kind of sort of a procedural where Will Graham and Hannibal Lecter and Jack Crawford were basically hunting a serial killer each episode. And they went seriously detailed with some of these crime scenes. Like, you just saw the judge. They had another one with a couple. I think it was a couple that was like strung up naked in a bedroom. You had one where it was like literally like a mosaic of a human eye was created with about something like 50 bodies. There was an entire like they did an entire like totem pole made of like with human bodies making up the structure of the totem pole. Like they went ham with some of these crime scenes. It was really fucking impressive. And like so the visuals were incredible and it was a very psychologically based, thriller and suspense show. And it was really fucking good for the first season. With and not only was it procedural, there was also it was a procedural, but there was this overarching story regarding one particular serial killer.
Safe for families. Yes, because shows like Law Order are totally okay for kids to watch.
Well, the key thing there is Law and Order was not graphic in what it showed. It discussed adult topics, but it was not graphic. And leave us not forget, Law and Order was a later night show. It was not part of the primetime lineup. Hannibal was originally part of the primetime lineup. Law and Order is a later show. And right, it never actually showed graphic violence. And so NBC was like, ooh, we can't have that. We can't have graphic violence on TV. Think of the children. The children won't know it's any different from reality. And unfortunately, this is what killed Constantine as well, I think. Because Constantine was another NBC show that was fucking great, but it was very dark and it was kind of graphic. And and because of that, it only lasted one season. So I think I'm pretty sure Constantine was in the same position as Hannibal was, and it's just very unfortunate that it fell victim to the same. Oh, it fell victim even worse than what Hannibal did, because Hannibal actually got 3 seasons. Constantine only got 1, which is a goddamn shame.
HBO or any other platform, it probably would have run for at least 10 seasons. But no,
I don't know about 10.
It had to survive on a network that thought this level of horror was way too much.
Yeah, like, look at this. Like, this was one of the crime scenes, for fuck's sake. Like, one of the serial killers turned this person into, like, a human moth. This was the kind of crime scenes that they were investigating, like, every week. It's, dark and horrific and incredibly clever and inventive and creative. Like, this was like they were doing this for every episode. It was creative as hell and really fucking interesting.
And you know what's
and
crazy?
Thank you, Josh.
Hannibal wasn't even the darkest stuff out there. But the third reason is the licensing problems.
Oh.
Behind the scenes, Hannibal was playing a bizarre legal game of who owns what. The show had the rights to Hannibal Lecter, but not Clarice Starling, the character that makes Silence of the Lambs actually work. She was off limits because the rights were split between multiple studios, making it legally impossible to ever tell the full Hannibal Lecter story. This is where the show's potential...
Wait, hang on. Who had the... would they say the rights to it?
The show had the rights to Hannibal Lecter, but not Clarice Starling, the character that makes Silence of the Lambs actually work. She was off limits because the rights were split between multiple studios, making it legally impossible to ever tell the full Hannibal Lecter story. This...
Bullshit! I'm sorry, bullshit. You don't need... This was a fucking prequel! This was a prequel to Silence of the Lambs. You didn't fucking need Clarice Starling. And correct me if I'm wrong, but did not NBC produce a show about Clarice Starling? Like, probably not very long after this show got canceled, I seem to recall that NBC actually had a Clarice Starling show of her in the FBI right after the events of Silence of the Lambs, and her operating as an FBI agent just after the events of Silence of the Lambs. So I'm sorry, that doesn't sound right. But again, I know that the pronunciation for Clarice's name was off. It's probably an AI voice, is my guess. That's usually what they use in these. But leave us not forget, this show is a prequel. Clarice was not even a factor. Now, I do remember hearing something about what the plan was. Is the way that this show was supposed to go. It was supposed to be 3 seasons. I think the long-term goal I vaguely remember hearing is there was gonna be like 1 or 2 seasons of pre-anything. So pre-Red Dragon, pre-Silence Lambs, pre-everything. There's gonna be 1 or 2 seasons of setup with Hannibal and Will Graham. Then 2 seasons encompassing the Red Dragon story arc. And then 2 seasons encompassing the Silence of the Lambs arc with Clarice. And then 2 seasons encompassing the Hannibal arc. The post Silence of the Lambs. And I think maybe 1 or 2 seasons afterwards as a conclusionary. I think I once heard that was the roadmap for this show. Which obviously never got that far. But, it started off as a prequel. So the rights to Clarice were not even a factor with this show. Because it was all about Hannibal and Will and Jack Ruffer. Those 3 characters were the primary characters. Clarice was not even a thought. So I'm gonna call bullshit on that, saying the problem with the studio had is they couldn't get Clarice. Clarice was never even on the docket in the first place. But Revan, that is possible, but that shouldn't tank the whole fucking show. That should not have been that singular thing should not have resulted in the entire show getting tanked up. They had no need for her. The show worked just fine without her. In fact, I would argue the show worked better without her. Because without the crutch of Clarice Starling with this show, they were able to do their own thing. They didn't have to rely upon essentially speaking, the fan service of Clarice Starling being present in a Silence of the Lambs show. They were able to be creative with their scripts. They were able to be creative with their acting, with their stories, and they did. And the scripts, the stories, they were all interesting at first. And then starting in season 2, it went off the rails. But season 1 and partway into season 2, they're really interesting and creative stories. Really fucking cool.
Making it legally impossible to ever tell the full Hannibal Lecter story. This is where the show's potential for greatness hit a wall. Brian Fuller, the visionary behind Hannibal, had massive plans for Clarice, including bringing Silence of the Lambs into the fold. But thanks to the annoying mess of legal rights, those plans were crushed before they could come to life.
So that may have been what I'd heard about what the plans were with Clarice, is that storyline arc I was telling you about. But this was another interesting facet of the show. Food. They made Hannibal's cooking a very prominent part of the show. Every episode, Hannibal was cooking some very extravagant dish, usually for Jack Crawford. Usually he was cooking for Jack Crawford. Yeah, there were sections of each episode very much dedicated to Hannibal's, cooking and food preparation. And was even knowing that he primarily, utilized long pig ingredients, the food still looked really fucking good. The food that he prepared in the show really looked fucking tasty, I must say.
NBC, seeing the giant legal headache that could turn into an even bigger money drain, just decided it wasn't worth the trouble. But the fourth reason is that Hannibal was too smart for the masses. As I've said, Hannibal was not casual viewing. It wasn't a show you could half watch while scrolling through your phone. If you blinked, you probably missed layers of symbolism and an entire psychological breakdown. It was a work of art. Every scene was layered with meaning, begging the viewer to ask questions and dig deeper. And most people don't want to work that hard. Most people.
Okay, I think that is being very disingenuous. Bearing in mind, I don't recall I want to say Hannibal came out, what was it? Mid-2010s, I think? No, someone in chat look up. When did Hannibal launch? When did season 1 for Hannibal launch? Because I think that's being disingenuous. The people that watched Hannibal, there were plenty of people around back when Hannibal launched that were not quote unquote too dumb to watch Hannibal. This was 2013. Yeah, okay, that's about when I thought it was. So this was realistically before. Yeah, this is over 10 years ago. People were not. Society at large, I don't think had gone full deal into the route of everything's got to be quick TikTok level edits or fast paced, got to keep everybody's attention. I don't think I feel like the general viewing audience hadn't gotten there yet, and that people actually were all for seeing rich, complex stories with meaningful with artistic, meaningful symbolism. I think there was still a very large demographic of people that enjoyed that. And a lot of people, I think, did. Yeah, zip ties? Exactly. We had Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was just as or even more complex than Hannibal, and that was one of the biggest shows on television. Now, could the argument be made that Game of Thrones was very bloody and had lots of titties, and that's what made it so popular? Sure. That certainly could be considered a legitimate argument for it. But people also really loved complexity in the shows, like rolling storylines. Throughout the season, like with the over arc, and people really like that. And Atsunashi, I will argue that people now want richly written shows because they want to return to that. It's not like people are suddenly deciding, oh no, I want a richly written show. It's people are saying, bring them back. We are pining for the days of those well-written shows. Not suddenly spontaneously saying, okay, we don't want quick cut comedy or quick cut, whatever. We want something more. No, people are saying, we want to go back to the way it used to be. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, Dexter's another good example, Haibo. Yeah. So I think that this excuse of saying the show is too smart for the audiences is a disservice. I really do. I don't know how much Hannibal was marketed, but it's saying it's too smart is doing a disservice to both this audience and the show itself. So I very much disagree with that.
People want something easy. Something they can just turn on, shut off their brain, and laugh at.
No!
And that's why—
Wrong! Fucking wrong! No, I 100% disagree with that. especially back in 2013, people were all for complex, thought-provoking, and engaging stories. So I 100% disagree with that statement of people just want to turn on the show and turn their brain off. No. Not in the slightest. I 100% disagree with that.
Something they can just turn on, shut off their brain, and laugh at. And that's why it wasn't that appreciated at that time. But it wasn't just the fans who were devastated when Hannibal got canceled. The cast was just as eager to keep the story going. In fact,
there you go. If it was competing with American Horror Story, another thought-provoking show, and it was on FX, so it wasn't overly violent or gory, is about the same as on NBC, and it was thought-provoking. Hugh Dancy. Thank you, Kaibo. I could not remember the actor's name. Yeah, Hugh Dancy as Will Graham. And he did a great job, I must say. There were other, so trying to say, oh, the NBC couldn't work around the gore. There were plenty of other network shows out there that were doing the same thing that were not HBO. And they were able to do it just fine.
Canceled. The cast was just as eager to keep the story going. In fact, they've been pretty vocal over the years about wanting to return, even long after the show ended. Mads Mikkelsen, the man that plays Hannibal Lecter, has made it clear multiple times that he'd be more than happy to step back into the role. But did you know that for a brief moment, it actually looked like Hannibal's about to come back? After the show landed on Netflix in 2020, a whole new wave of fans discovered it, and suddenly, Hannibal was trending again. For the first time in years, it actually felt possible. And then, Mads Mikkelsen himself gave fans even more reason to believe. In a 2021 interview, he confirmed that serious discussions were happening.
Brian Fuller said that next year he's going to be chatting about whether it could come back.
Okay.
Have you heard anything about that? Do you know anything?
No. It's the first thing I hear. Right now there's radio silence. He's obviously doing Star Trek, and we need him.
They need you as well. Would you be?
Yeah. Would I be game? I love him. I think he's a genius, and we will definitely find time in the calendar.
But then,
interesting. Same thing happened to Lucifer, which I'm pretty sure was also an NBC show. When Lucifer went off the air on NBC, Netflix picked it up. And it got a whole nother, 3 or 4 seasons after it got picked up? Very interesting. NBC seems to have a problem keeping their shows. And they get, no, Lucifer was not CW. No. Lucifer was a network show. It was he did have an appearance on CW. Lucifer did have an appearance in the Arrowverse on CW because Lucifer was the DC comic version of Lucifer. So he did have an appearance on the CW when they did Crisis on Infinite Earths. Or no, yeah. Yeah, I think it was Crisis. Yeah, I think it was Crisis on Infinite Earths. They went, Constantine and a couple others went to Earth 666 and they encountered Lucifer, and it was the Lucifer from the TV show. I forget the actor's name. Oh God, I hate when I do this. I know the actor's name, and I'm blanking on it. Tom Ellis. They went to Earth 666. Was it Fox? Okay, it was Fox. Sorry, my mistake. Fox, not NBC. And yeah, they went to Earth 666. And they meet Tom Ellis's Lucifer, Constantine goes Tom Ellis's Lucifer to basically get a card to go get Oliver Queen. But no, Lucifer was never on the CW. He was Fox, and that was my mistake. I said NBC. You are correct. It was on Fox, but Fox gave it up because Fox is fucking stupid, as always. Netflix picked it up after Fox canceled it, and it got 3 more seasons. On Netflix. It actually got a proper send-off on Netflix. Be interesting if Netflix, granted, Hannibal's a bit old as a series right now, considering it ended, 7, 8 years ago. So, that's Reb, that's the part of this video saying now Netflix picked it up and it gained popularity. So, there was a thought that maybe they do more Hannibal, but I think it's been too long of a time period. Yeah, I think there's two, like, Lucifer. Netflix, when Lucifer got canceled off Fox and Netflix picked it up, there was, I think, maybe a 1 or 2 year gap between when Lucifer ended on Fox and when Netflix generated the new episodes. When they ported over their platform. 10 years, I think, is too long of a time to revive this show. The actors are all older, and I honestly think just too much time has passed. You're going to have diehard fans that would be very interested in it, but I just do think too much time has passed, unfortunately. Plus, leave us not forget, I'm going to wait to see if they bring it up. The way they ended the Hannibal TV show is kind of kills off everybody. That's the other big problem, is they literally killed off everybody at the end of the Hannibal TV show. So that's a problem. Let's see if they talk about this.
Nothing happened. The Netflix buzz didn't turn into a renewal, and all that momentum just fizzled out. But the sad part is that Brian Fuller, the mastermind behind Hannibal, had big plans for the show, and they didn't just stop at 3 seasons. In fact, Fuller had a vision that stretched across 7 seasons, each season building toward a more ambitious story that would all add up at the end.
No, it wasn't.
But
I don't think that was Rabin. It looked like him, but I'm thinking that probably was Brian Fuller.
But the sad part is that Brian Fuller...
His face isn't round enough. I don't think that's Seth Rogen.
The mastermind behind Hannibal had big plans for the show, and they didn't just stop at 3 seasons. In fact, Fuller had a vision that stretched across 7 seasons, each season building toward a more ambitious story that would all add up at the end.
Okay, Leo.
But there is also a good part to all of this. Did you know that Hannibal is more popular now than ever? The show has only gotten more popular since its cancellation, and that's mostly thanks to streaming. When Netflix added it to its catalog, it was trending above many newer shows that benefited from big budgets and better technology. Every year, new fans come across it, but when they find out about the show...
Because shock of shocks, people are hungry for good stories. The flash of the flash of special effects and quick cuts has lost its luster. And people are hungry for good BT stories that people can sink their teeth into. Was it Seth Rogen? Well, considering the AI voice can't pronounce Clarice, that wouldn't surprise me.
Premature death, they all become upset and irritated. So, why did Hannibal get canceled? Because it was too good for a network that had no idea what to do with it. The show didn't fit the mold that mainstream media was comfortable with. But the fact that we're still talking about it years later proves that great cinema never dies.
Okay, so he didn't talk about it. I mentioned this before. The conclusion, they concluded Hannibal, the show, by, season 3 culminated with the Red Dragon storyline. A rather abbreviated version of the Red Dragon storyline. But it concluded much differently than Manhunter and Red Dragon did. The way that the Red Dragon storyline in the Hannibal TV show concluded is Will and Hannibal both track down Dolomire. I forget Dolomire's first name was, but the Red Dragon Killer. They track him down, not to just some like big house, big country house. It was like a fucking cliffside house or something. And Will and Hannibal both fight Dollar Eye. The show, the series literally concludes with Will and Hannibal 2-on-1ing Dollarhide, fighting him in like slow motion, and then all three of them going off a cliff together, and boom, that's how the entire series ends. So they killed off their two main characters, and I think Jack Lawford might have also been dead by this point. I can't recall. They can't continue the show because they've killed off all the fucking characters. The only thing they can hope to do would be to like reboot it. Well, yeah, Redden, because I think what happened is the writing was on the wall with season 3. They knew the show was going to get canceled. They had to, and I think they speed wrote a conclusion. So they basically just took the Red Dragon / Manhunter storyline and wrote it in a way that the ending is completely different from the original and kills off everybody. That's what I think that they ended up doing to conclude the series, probably because they had to rush it through. Well, I'd say it's not a neutral ending. I think they just because they were getting flat out canceled, I think they just wanted to conclude it. Who knows? Maybe the studio told them kill everybody. Who the fuck knows? The way these studios do things, most of this doesn't make sense anyway. Honestly. But it was it was a really good show. That's the sad part. It was a really good show. And I wish more people had seen it. If you have Netflix, give it a watch. Absolutely give it a watch. It is a great psychological thriller. It does go off the rails into season 2 and season 3, but it is still a really good show to watch.